Welcome to Generating Demand, real stories from the B2B trenches, where we tell you our secrets, like how to establish thought leadership, or rock your webinar registrations, and tips and tricks to drive sales-ready leads. Lean in, listen, and learn. We've got you covered. This podcast is brought to you by Virtual Intelligence Briefing.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Generating Demand, Stories from the B2B Trenches. We're here today with Samuel Chapman, a content strategist with more than 10 years of experience writing content to support the marketing function. Sam is currently the Director of Content Strategy and Brand Experience at Aprimo. Hi, Sam. Welcome.
Hey there.
Sam and I, in full transparency, have worked together before. We've known each other for quite some time. And I am excited to have Sam here because working with him allowed me to scale and grow and finalize and implement the narrative and the story and the positioning that I was trying to convey in market and in order to drive demand. So I know from experience, Sam does an excellent job with that.
Why, thank you.
You're welcome. Sam, I hear you have a story for us today about video. Tell me more about it.
Yeah. So real quick, I think video is super important, and I think it's often either underutilized or misused. But in the kind of context of content and demand, I think the one thing that you spoke about are strategies for go-to-markets together. Which I think when we're telling these stories of wins and losses with content, if the strategic element is probably the most important part.
I agree.
Foundation, bringing something to the forefront before you kick off a campaign, an idea, is always going to drive something to be more effective and more measurable, right? So when I think of the content demand symbiosis, I think of it as like a shape of a football. You've got content here and demand here and two arrows. One informs the other comes back, and that's kind of, for me, the representation of the art and science of marketing.
That's a good one.
You don't want to lead with data too much to produce what you think your audience wants. You need to maintain some sort of human element, and then use the data on the back end to inform what to do in the future. So that's kind of like, with that said, and the strategic aspect, I think we can get into understanding why something didn't work, and it's usually a break in one of those two chains.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'll say at a very high level, the content strategy is critical, and then the actual execution of the content is also critical. When you're dealing with short form content, every word matters. I know that I have in the past worked with a number of copywriters and have been a stickler on my verbs. The English language has so many great verbs, right. And using can, is as a default, I think is common, but we can do so much better than that to convey what we're trying to convey in as concise of a way as possible. I often work with visionaries that have these big ideas, and with that comes a lot of words, and I try and bring that down. And I also try to make sure that we're using language for the lowest common denominator, like a third, fourth, fifth, sixth grade language, maybe eighth grade language if it's something very technical, but trying not to get too elevated, because many of our prospects, English may be a second language, or so on and so forth. So
that's I call it the airport bar conversation. That's going to be, you got to be able to communicate what you do to, anybody, any walk of life. And it's going to be conversational and human.
Yeah. Especially in video, when you have such a short time frame to capture someone's attention, and only a few words, a few character counts, few words to get that done. So tell me more about your video story.
Yeah, well, in the orchestration of it, as you know, there's a perception that, and this is backed up by my experience and everyone who's worked in it, that it's expensive, it takes a long time, and it better be it better be amazing and deliver the intended results. So with that said, yeah, the story I have in mind. So throughout the maybe 2 quarters, we produced probably 3 or 4 highly produced videos with motion graphics, After Effects, and some were more product level explainer videos, and one was more at the brand level, kind of what we do, differentiators, value props, um, all pretty hefty sum at the end of the day, but with the intention of using them in ABM, some ABM campaigns, direct mailers, even. Of course,
Mhm.
this is pre-COVID times. Um,
Mhm.
the videos were amazing. They were used in every office when you came in. They were used in a lot of like email signatures. So the usage of them was far and wide. But
That's great.
when we got to the actual campaigns of it, and again, I think it bears stating that this is kind of in, I would call it the ABM light days, where ABM was kind of just like, you could also just call it good field marketing.
Yeah.
um, so it wasn't kind of like a full-fledged what you have now with all these, the Martech stack specifically built for ABM, that was just kind of emerging. Um, so the the story goes that we produce this. It's used, like I've said, in communications and at trade shows, um, and then it was also used as this big event with core key partners at this very fancy dinner, kind of glad handing networking partner event in Manhattan, and it's kind of at the mezzanine level. If you can picture it, it's got a balcony, and then over
Mhm.
across the square below, there's this massive jumbotron um,
Okay.
on the opposing wall where we ran the video, one of these videos, in addition to a couple slides that we had put together as bumpers on either end. Um,
Nice. So I
so
want to just
yeah,
clarify that. So the company is having a high-end, high-touch, cultivated event with a strategic guest list.
right.
And the place that dinner is being held also has a jumbotron sort of in the entrance or in the lobby leading into the dinner space, right? So all these decision makers going in and out of your event are getting the amplified messaging on this jumbotron. Is that right?
Yep, it was so there was monitors within the space, but this so you're in the event hall with the mezzanine directly out the glass windows, and this is across the street, if you will, from a square
Nice.
from the hotel. Was the was this massive? So we've got all of our kind of tables set up with corporate content and assets that they can brief through, brochures, um, but also like it's like kind of out there, just at running. So whenever you turn your head towards this kind of like the spectacle of the room, it's there.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's
Um,
great.
so the thing with that is I think at the end of the day, what it's kind of like, I don't want to say so what. There's a video. It was produced, not necessarily for this purpose, but when you're producing such a high value piece of content, and I think this is now more important than ever, more important than it was back then, is how do you attribute the, I guess what you could call the return on effort
Mm-hmm.
to that video. And sure,
Yeah.
you could do a lot of stuff through YouTube, web analytics, more of your vanity stuff, and do a kind of like a retro ROI analysis maybe 6 months down the road, right?
Yeah,
ROI takes a while
it
for the
does.
content.
Oh, well,
um,
and let me ask you too, your ROI, I see this a lot with events. Your ROI really cannot be measured until you've gone through at least one full sales cycle, right? So the company that you're doing this for,
right.
tell me about their sales cycle. Was it, an enterprise sale, 5, 6, 7 figures, 6 months, 12 months? Tell me a little bit more about that
Yeah, so that ROI would even be more impacted by that because it was 9 to 12 months.
for a
There's a
sales
lot of
cycle.
sales cycle, and deals from I would say 5 and 6 up to 7 figures.
Hmm.
And some of these deals take years to chase down, as you know.
Yeah, yeah. So large enterprise style deals. And tell me a little bit more about the video too. Was it an animated video? Did you have to hire actors and scripts and do location on, on site videography or getting a producer? Tell me a little bit more about the style of the video from a production standpoint.
Yeah, mostly heavy on we had we had actors just that were basically custom um, um, Shutterstock actors, just so they were different than what you'd find in um, uh, why am I forgetting what
Like
the
stock
stock, right?
videography.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you went
Um,
and hired actors.
but they were through the agency that we used to do the video. So we got
Okay.
their motion graphics, After Effects, and most of it was animated with some nuances, because like we like to use people to kind of remind that this B2B tech is actually has humans at either end of it.
Yeah, and I'm gonna jump in on that and iterate just how incredibly important that is. I have there's age-old psychology studies that people look at people. It's our little monkey brains in the back of our heads, right? We can't help it. And so putting people in your imagery is always a good idea. Even though from a production value, it may complicate things, right? So,
Yeah, yeah, it adds a whole nother layer to kind of
hmm
like consideration of people. Yeah,
hmm
yeah. So and this particular video was a series that we've done, like, so it was meant to be you know tofu mofu bofu with more of the brand, what we
Will you
do.
explain those terms to the audience? I'm
Yeah,
not necessarily sure that everyone understands that. I know when I first saw it, I was like, I don't get it. I
so,
know it now, but I don't know that everyone does. So
so yeah, top of funnel, middle of the funnel,
tofu.
bottom
Tofu
of
is top of funnel, middle
right.
of the funnel, mofu.
Yeah.
Bottom of the funnel is bofu.
Right.
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
So like you do 3 videos, you get a deal, but then you run the risk of, like, we need to make them different and each have their own kind of agency and utility. Um, so it becomes it's a big investment, and you want to make sure that they're used and ideally tracked to some sort of, like I said, that return on effort, which is like man hours, people hours spent.
Hmm.
Crossed with what's that data you can pull from, like campaign analytics, uh,
Yeah.
and that actually helps you because you're talking about sales cycle, and then that compounds the length of an ROI. How that gets back to talking about, but what can I learn now? Like, I need to see now
Hmm.
if this is actually working in the field, if it's working in this channel. um,
Hmm.
so I don't just go ahead and load up another campaign, because, like, when you're really running and building things at scale, you're not running one campaign at a time. You're doing multiple, you're considering multiple, you're building and architecting multiple. So you want to get a sense of, is this working in market, so I can have at least kind of a gut check on if I can drop it in here or drop it in there, uh,
Hmm.
rather than waiting that 6 to 9 months.
Yeah, I'll tell you, as a demand gen marketer, I have very limited experience with video because it is such an undertaking. And quite honestly, I've never been empowered with a budget where I could spend that much on a video to do what I want to do, right? The first thing I think is, oh my gosh, plane tickets and agencies and videographers and producers, directors, video editors. And then you have the tracking. It is a major and massive undertaking at times,
Right.
or it can be. Um, I would say that beyond the effort that goes into it, the and the dollar spend that goes into it, you do want to be able to say, what are we getting out of this? Um, Shameless plug right here for VIB, who sponsors this. They do brand awareness studies, and that could be one way that you measure how is this impacting market. Just kind of doing like a quick brand awareness study in that field to see if it is improving top of mind recall.
Right.
Um, but that does not give you any insight into the ROI, like you said, down the road. So,
Yeah, and just in terms of, like, putting something that seems more corporate and over and, like, very much produced. Um, there's been a lot of research coming out on what constitutes, like, pattern disrupting content.
Mm-hmm.
So often something where you're just grabbing your phone and throwing it up there, running your podcast from your car on your way to work. Um, Having that kind of user generated content approach to developing, video really, or a podcast audio, um, that I think stands out to people, and to an audience, because it's what we recognize from our civilian lives.
Yeah.
And when you're in this world of B2B, just like flooded with brands, all competing for your fractional attention, that
Yeah.
something that disrupts like that, that's like, it's personal. It comes straight to you. It's almost like the brand's kind of like, it assumes a personality, and it kind of breaks that cadence of like the B2B, drum beat. It's just more natural. So I think, and then you can get into the thing of volume and velocity of a video. So you start stripping the need for an agency, the need for overproduction, and you just start
Mhm.
cranking stuff out and seeing what sticks. I
Yeah.
think you're going to see a lot more of that going. I mean, we already see quite a bit of it. Just say on your daily death scroll through LinkedIn.
Well, I think you bring up a really good point between like high value production and sort of lo-fi, right? Low fidelity type production, and the popularity of that is gaining for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. So back to your story. Tell me a little bit more. So you have all your team. I'm sorry. You have the events team that has created this high value, highly curated event. You geniusly secured the jumbotron across from the event, and then you created this video to support the top of the funnel brand awareness all the way through to the bottom funnel decision making, and tipping those over the edge. And then you explain the importance of trying to tie some measurement to that video production. In the end, what happened?
Well, so the event was deemed successful, of course. The the one element that I think strategically we didn't really get into was that with those three videos, in having them staged out, the follow
Mhm.
up from the event, when we hit them with either those kind of more middle and bottom funnel videos,
Yeah.
established a you know that did something psychologically, because they'd seen this format at the event. I mean,
Hmm.
that's kind of thinking, and it's more, they're more inclined to sit through the 90 seconds or whatever it is that we're sending.
Yeah.
So there was like a follow up, including other elements that were branded and done creatively in a similar way. So there was a familiarity.
Nice.
But in terms of a single piece of content from that campaign, we didn't really post game like that. It was
Yeah.
uh, what business cards went into the fishbowl, um, and once we've filled those into Salesforce, like at the end of the day, like what new names did we get, right?
Yeah. And did you get any sales from that an effort, that initiative?
So what it did is just it skyrocketed the partnership, that was of a strategic technology alliance.
Nice.
That was kind of the end game. Um,
Nice.
and that did firm that up and allow us to develop essentially a kind of a go-to-market, a partner channel go-to-market that really defined that specific product portfolio for us.
Nice. That's awesome.
But as a campaign, I think with if we think of what's a successful campaign, being able to show metrics of success beyond the vanity of it, I think we didn't hit the mark. Just in terms of being able to repeat it, uh,
Yeah.
it didn't really. I don't think it would be able to be repeated.
Mm.
So
Well, that is a good, I think the value of telling these stories and sharing these stories is that we learn from stories as humans, right?
right,
Storytelling is a great way to better ourselves, from what to do, what not to do. Um, So thank you for sharing your stories with us today. And I have one request
Sure.
before we go. I'd like to close off with asking you for a recommended resource of some kind, something that you have derived value from in your career, either in doing the work that you do or in your career development, growing from, a copywriter many years ago to a director of content strategy and brand experience today. Um, the catch, you cannot be associated to this resource in any way, shape, or form.
All right.
But it can be a community, a book, a blog, a podcast, a video, a Slack channel, any of the above.
Yeah, I was thinking about this earlier, and there's a lot. There's people. The value of mentorship. That's something that I always think is, if possible, seek out a mentor, be a mentor. That's a huge area for learning.
Yeah, I agree.
I always think back to the book, The Lean Startup. I mean, not the whole thing,
Mm.
but the concept that I bring from that to a lot of what I do uh, creatively and just leadership wise is the minimum viable product concept.
Yeah, that's a
That
great concept.
it doesn't have to be the best, but it needs to, what can we do to get that MVP out the door? And I've taken that into all, just like the way I approach a lot of campaigns is, it's not so much as important that we just spin our cycles and get it perfect. It's that, like, as part of anything progress driven oriented, you've got to break those ties and move on. That's like the most important thing of like leadership of a campaign, is forward progress. So I love that
Yeah.
product for that reason.
That is a great one. I think that book is by Eric Ries, if I'm not mistaken, The Lean
Right.
Startup. And I think it's on my bookshelf. You may not be able to see it because of the pictures in front of it, but
Yeah, it's over here
um,
for me with all of my marketing books. They have a specific, shelf, so they're away from the other ones.
from the literature ones.
Right.
Well, I
um,
love that. I love the MVP. I think, there's another saying, done is better than perfect. I know that I had to really embrace that as I grew in my career.
that's a tough
And
one.
yeah, and closely related to the MVP. And I think the other thing that comes to mind when you share that is what I call the SFD. I think, pardon my language here, I'm about to curse, but the shitty first draft.
Oh yeah.
Just getting that SFT done,
Yeah.
or that SFD done is the it can be the game changer, right? It's forward
Right.
momentum, right? It's just something to react to and iterate on, much like an MVP.
And
So
that helps. I think when you think of the way that modern, whether it's B2B or whatever, modern marketing works, is the embrace of agile with
mhm.
iteration is so important with that MVP, with the SFD, because otherwise you're getting into the old waterfall, and then everything between start and complete
Mhm.
becomes this task driven, um, kind of execution oriented, where everyone's heads down just cranking out their individual task. And when you really need everyone from creatives to product management, everyone should be like thinking more strategically within that agile methodology. So
Model.
yeah,
Yeah.
so the model is important to bake those things in, like, let's get something out, um, let's iterate, but let's get it out and move. Like the motion
Yeah.
is healthy, right? It's
Yeah.
you know
And another reason I love Google Suite, right, is that we can all get in at the same time and we can leave each other notes and we can collaborate and iterate, in a fast fashion,
right.
so that we're not taking months to do one project. So,
Yeah.
well,
The
Sam, it's been,
Sorry,
go
I
ahead.
had one
Yes,
more
please do.
resource.
Please do.
Sorry.
I'd love to hear it.
I just wanted to get it. It's a newsletter. It's by Top Hat. It's called Please Advise. And
Okay.
it's a great exercise in, top-notch content curation. It's super quick to digest. They've got 3 sections. It's like look, do, try. Um,
Nice.
and the cool part about this, and something I think that we can reflect in with this kind of more rather than B2B, it's H to H, human to human communications, is the news you can use type of content. So something where I can grab something off of LinkedIn and go sound smarter in a meeting, for example,
Yeah.
or read this newsletter and have 4 interesting things in my creative sessions to throw up there for web design or examples of where copy really nailed it. And so I love that stuff where it's something that's beneficial and asks for nothing in return.
Absolutely. Adding value to the market. So that's great. So Top Hat, we just go to tophat.com and look for their newsletter. Is that right?
Yeah. Or just probably drop in, please advise.
Please advise newsletter. Right. Okay. Awesome. Well, that sounds awesome. What a great resource. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your story, Sam. Thank you for being here. It was a pleasure having you.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity, Amanda. It's great to connect.
Always great to see you.
Yeah, likewise.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
See you on down the road.
If you have any questions, want to suggest topics, or have ideas for guest speakers, drop us a line at podcast@virtualintelligencebriefing.com. To learn more of our demand generation secrets, visit vibriefing.news or grab the link in our show notes.